When a woman whispers the right word at the right time, she doesn't just speak. She awakens something ancient in a man, a quiet, instinctive part of him that no one else gets to touch. And here's the truth. Men may look strong on the outside, but every man deep down craves to feel significant. Not praised, not pitied, but seen. You see, when a confident, mature woman calls a man by a name that resonates not out of habit, not to flatter, but because she means it, it goes deeper than any compliment. It reminds him he's not invisible. It tells him you matter in my world. That's what men secretly love. Not the nickname itself, but the recognition behind it. A man doesn't melt because you call him baby. He melts when the word carries respect, when it's said by someone whose voice carries emotional truth, someone who doesn't need him, but chooses him. There's a difference between a name that's thrown around and one that's earned through energy. When a woman with experience, a woman who knows herself, says, "Hey, handsome," in that low, confident tone, she's not trying to win him. She's reminding him who he is capable of being. And that's what men respond to, not manipulation, not seduction games, but meaning. You see, a nickname becomes powerful only when it reflects a man's identity. Call a man my rock, and if his proven strength, hell live up to it. Call him champ when he's just conquered something difficult, and you'll see his eyes shift because he feels recognized. Men are not emotionally numb, they're emotionally starved. Starved of being seen beyond their performance, starved of acknowledgement that doesn't come with expectation. So when a woman whispers a name that carries warmth and admiration, something small but real, she breaks that hunger. She gives him something rare, peace. But here's what separates the powerful woman from the rest. She doesn't use words as tools for validation. She uses them as expressions of truth. When she calls him my man, it's not to stake ownership, it's to honor partnership. When she calls him love, it's not out of routine, it's a reflection of presence. When she says hero, it's not to boost his ego, it's to remind him that his effort is seen. It's not the nickname itself, it's the depth behind it. A younger woman might say it playfully, but an older woman, she says it intentionally. And that difference changes everything, because confidence doesn't shout. It whispers, and that whisper, when it carries warmth, admiration, and truth, pierces a man's emotional armor. You see, every man carries silent battles inside. Every man faces a world that demands strength and offers little softness. And when a woman whispers his name, the one only she uses, she gives him sanctuary. That's what nicknames truly are, sanctuaries of belonging. Not tricks, not tactics, not seduction games, but emotional keys opening doors to connection that logic can never reach. So, if you're a woman listening to this, don't just throw around names, mean them, speak with presence, speak from your scent. Ita, they sense stability. They sense that this woman doesn't need to tear them down to feel powerful. She doesn't need to prove herself, she's already centered. That's where the real magnetism lives. Respect behind playfulness is power disguised as grace. It says, I can laugh with you, but never at you. It says, I can challenge you, but never belittle you. It says, I can have fun with you, but it'll never forget your dignity. And when a man feels that, truly feels it, he relaxes. Because in a world where most people try to compete or control, finding someone who knows how to honor while playing feels like a rare form of peace. It's not manipulation, it's mastery. Respect hidden behind playfulness also reveals your emotional control. Anyone can joke, anyone can flirt, but only those who are internally grounded can stay light without losing depth. That's why the most captivating energy is one that feels safe and exciting at the same time. You can laugh, you can tease, you can challenge, but beneath all of it, there's a calm assurance that no line will be crossed. It's the emotional equivalent of fire within boundaries, beautiful, warm, and unforgettable. Let's be honest, respect is often misunderstood as seriousness. But that's wrong. Respect doesn't silence playfulness, it enhances it. Because when respect is present, playfulness becomes fearless. You can express freely without fear of being misread or misunderstood. You can be light-hearted without losing depth. It's not about trying to win the moment. It's about creating a moment that feels like home. And if you look closer, the relationships that last, the connections that stay magnetic, all share this same quality. Respect at the root, playfulness at the surface. That's the perfect polarity. The masculine feels trusted, the feminine feels free. Both bring their energy to the table, not to overpower, but to harmonize. It's a power dynamic without domination, it's balance. So, the next time you speak, tease, or flirt, ask yourself, is there respect behind it? Because when there is, your words become music instead of noise. Your presence becomes calm instead of chaos. And your energy, instead of scattering, starts to command. That's when your playfulness becomes more than fun. It becomes influence, because behind every magnetic connection, there's one invisible force holding it together. Respect quietly hidden behind playfulness. Powerful motivational speech, deep masculine feminine psychology tone, strong and focused, no useless talk. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers and the world still listens. Real power is never loud. It doesn't demand attention. It commands it through presence, through the calm, grounded certainty of someone who doesn't need to prove a thing. You see, true strength doesn't need to shout to be felt. It's carried in the quiet moments, in the tone of your voice, in the steadiness of your breath, in the way your energy fills a room without saying a single word. Whispered power is the kind of energy that makes people lean in, not because they fear you, but because they respect you. It's not performance, it's presence, and presence is earned. The loudest people often lack control. They try to convince the world of their worth because they haven't yet convinced themselves. But when a person understands who they are, when they're rooted in self-respect, emotional control, and quiet confidence, their energy begins to whisper with authority. That's the paradox of power. The quieter it becomes, the stronger it grows. Think of the most magnetic moments in your life, the conversations that stayed in your memory, the moments when someone looked at you and didn't say much, yet their silence said everything. That's whispered power. It's not about volume, it's about intention. When a woman whispers instead of shouts, her words slice deeper. When a man speaks with calm certainty instead of chaos, his words carry weight. Because whispered power doesn't come from insecurity, it comes from inner alignment. You don't need to dominate when you understand your value. You don't need to chase validation when your self-worth is already built on something immovable. That's what makes whispered power so magnetic. It's rare. It's what happens when strength meets composure, when emotion meets control, and when you master that, your energy starts to shift everything around you. People can feel it. They don't know why, but they sense it. It's in how you walk into a room, slow, deliberate, focused. It's in how you speak, measured, precise, intentional. It's in how you listen fully, without distraction, as if nothing else exists in that moment. That's power without aggression, influence without noise. You don't need to tell people you're powerful. You show them through how little you need to prove it, because those who are loud are often trying to convince the room, but those who whisper, they already own the room. Whispered power is emotional discipline. It's the control to stay calm when others react. It's the strength to choose silence over impulsiveness. It's knowing that your energy, when refined, is far more effective than any argument, any performance, any display of dominance. There's something deeply attractive about that control, because control equals safety. When a man carries whispered power, a woman feels safe around him, not because he's aggressive, but because his calm tells her he's capable. When a woman carries whispered power, a man feels drawn to her not because she's loud or demanding, but because her softness hides something fierce and unshakable. That duality, soft yet strong, calm yet commanding, that's where real magnetism lives. Most people chase loud energy because they think that's what draws attention. But attention fades fast. Respect, however, endures. And whispered power always earns respect because it doesn't chase, it chooses. You see, when your words come from stillness, they resonate. When your actions come from certainty, they inspire. And when your presence comes from peace, it transforms the entire atmosphere around you. That's not just emotional maturity, that's mastery. Whispered power isn't weakness, it's controlled strength. It's the art of being assertive without being aggressive. It's the discipline to hold your energy instead of throwing it away. And here's the truth. Only those who've faced chaos inside themselves can embody that kind of calm. Because silence means nothing if it's born from fear, but silence born from control? That's sacred. It's the quiet of a lion before it moves. It's the stillness of a storm gathering strength. It's the pause between inhale and exhale where focus becomes absolute. That's the realm of whispered power. When you master it, everything changes. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop needing approval. You start choosing alignment. You stop chasing love. You start attracting it naturally, magnetically, effortlessly. Because whispered power doesn't beg to be noticed. It invites curiosity. It doesn't seek validation. It creates gravity. People lean closer, not because they're told to, but because they want to. They feel your control. They feel your peace. And in a world of noise, your stillness becomes unforgettable. So remember this. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to prove to be respected. You don't need to dominate to be remembered. You just need to be grounded, focused, present. Because when your power whispers, it speaks louder than any noise ever could. That's the power that can't be faked. That's the energy that commands the world without ever raising its voice. That is whispered power. Control is an illusion. Connection is the truth. And the moment you stop trying to control, you finally begin to influence. Every human being craves certainty. We want to feel in charge of our relationships, our emotions, our outcomes. But here's the paradox. The harder you try to control people, the more they pull away. Because control suffocates the very thing it's trying to preserve: connection. Real influence, real attraction doesn't come from force. It comes from freedom. When you choose connection over control, you stop chasing power and start creating trust. You move from manipulation to magnetism, from fear to flow. Because control is born from insecurity, from the fear that if you let go, you'll lose. But connection is born from strength, from the knowing that what's real never needs to be forced. People who try to control others are not evil, they're afraid. Afraid of uncertainty, afraid of rejection, afraid of being unseen. But fear creates resistance. It builds walls instead of bridges. And every time you tighten your grip, you weaken your bond. When you control, you restrict. When you connect, you expand. That's why the most magnetic people in the world aren't the ones who dominate, they're the ones who understand. They create safety, not submission. They make you feel free, yet deeply seen. That's the paradox of true strength. It doesn't hold you down. It makes you want to stay. Lou. K at any relationship, personal, romantic, professional, and you'll see the same truth play out. Control creates compliance. Connection creates commitment. Control creates fear. Connection creates respect. Control manipulates behavior. Connection inspires it. You can make someone obey you, but you'll never make them love you. You can demand attention, but you'll never earn devotion. Because the heart doesn't respond to pressure, it responds to presence. That's why emotionally powerful people are calm. They don't chase. They don't argue for dominance. They don't compete for control. They lead through understanding. They speak from self-respect. And that's what draws others in. Connection over control requires emotional maturity, the ability to sit in uncertainty without panicking, to trust the process without forcing the outcome. It's not weakness, it's strength in its purest form. Because the person who can stay still when everything around them is uncertain, that's the person with true power. The one who can stay open instead of defensive, vulnerable instead of manipulative, patient instead of desperate. That's not passivity, that's composure. And composure is the mark of leadership. Think about it. When you meet someone who makes you feel controlled, you resist. You pull away. You lose trust. But when you meet someone who makes you feel understood, you lean in. You open up. You choose them. That's connection. And that's why in love, the strongest energy you can bring isn't control, it's understanding. Because when people feel seen, they naturally align. They cooperate. They commit not because they're told to, but because they want to. That's emotional gravity. That's real influence. Connection over control also applies to yourself. Stop trying to control your emotions. Start connecting to them. Don't suppress what you feel, understand it. Because when you connect with your emotions, you start to lead them instead of being led by them. Anger, jealousy, insecurity, they all lose power when you face them with awareness. That's self-connection, and that's the foundation of every strong relationship, your ability to be grounded inside your own storm. When you're connected to yourself, you don't need to control others. When you're connected to your purpose, you don't need to control outcomes. When you're connected to truth, you don't need to control perceptions, because control is for the fearful. Connection is for the free. Let's get brutally honest, control is ego's way of masking fear. It says, if I can predict everything, I can't be hurt. But love, real influence demands risk. It requires faith. The greatest leaders, lovers, and visionaries all share one trait: they lead through connection. They don't dominate, they inspire. They don't manipulate, they empower. They don't demand loyalty, they earn it. Because control may get you obedience, but connection gets you devotion. When you stop controlling, you begin to listen. When you listen, you begin to understand. When you understand, you begin to influence. That's the hierarchy of emotional power. Control is about forcing outcomes. Connection is about aligning energies. Control says, do what I want. Connection says, let's create what's real. And the moment you shift from control to connection, everything changes. Your relationships deepen, your communication sharpens, your presence strengthens. You stop fighting for power and start embodying it. So choose connection over control every time, because control is rooted in fear, but connection is rooted in faith. Control is fragile, connection is unbreakable. Control pushes, connection pulls. When you stop trying to dominate life, people, or outcomes, you discover something extraordinary: influence without effort. The kind that flows naturally, the kind that inspires trust, the kind that leaves a mark without force. Because the most powerful people aren't those who can make others obey. They're the ones who make others want to listen. That's not control, that's connection. And that is real power. Words mean nothing until they're earned, and once they are, they can move mountains. We live in a world drowning in noise. Everyone is speaking, few are saying anything that matters. Because talk is cheap until it comes from a person who's proven the weight behind it. When someone's words are earned through integrity, consistency, and presence, they stop being sounds. They become signals, they carry gravity, they shape reality. That's the difference between empty flattery and meaningful truth, between manipulation and leadership, between a voice that fades and a voice that stays. Earned words are not spoken often because people who've earned their weight don't need to prove themselves through volume. They know silence holds more power than words that lack foundation. Anyone can say, I love you, but not everyone can make those words mean something. Anyone can promise loyalty, but not everyone can live up to it. Because words don't create trust, actions do. Words simply reflect what's already been proven. That's why some people can whisper and move your entire being while others can scream and you feel nothing. It's not the word that carries power, it's the character behind it. Earned words are born from discipline. They're forged in the quiet moments no one sees, the late nights of work, the choices made when it would have been easier to lie, the courage to stand in truth even when it costs something. Those moments build credibility, and credibility gives your voice power. You can't fake it. You can't force it. You can't demand it. You earn it through integrity. And once you've earned it, your words start to carry a different vibration. People feel it. They don't just hear you, they trust you. That's what separates noise from influence. Look at the people who truly move others. They don't use many words, but when they speak, everyone listens. Because the audience knows this person doesn't talk to be heard. They talk because what they say matters. Their energy says, I've lived tea. Their tone says, I've earned this. And that's what gives their words weight. Every sentence becomes a reflection of a life lived in alignment, not a performance, but a presence. That's the kind of communication that changes people. It doesn't entertain, it awakens. In relationships, the same principle applies. You can tell someone you care, but until your actions prove consistency, your words mean nothing. You can say, trust me, but if your behavior breaks integrity, no amount of words can repair it. Because trust isn't built by what you say, it's built by what you repeat through action. That's why people stop listening to promises and start watching patterns. Earned words only come from people who align what they say with what they do repeatedly. And that repetition builds something sacred: credibility. Credibility is emotional gold. Once you have it, you don't need to demand respect, you command it naturally. You see, every word you speak carries energy, and energy doesn't lie. If your energy is inconsistent, your words will feel empty. If your energy is grounded, your words will land. If your energy is fake, your words will echo and disappear. But when your energy is clean, when your intentions match your actions, even a whisper can carry thunder. That's the kind of voice people remember, not because it's loud, but because it's real. Earned words also reveal self-respect. When you value your words, you don't waste them. You don't say things just to fill silence or to impress others. You speak with precision, with purpose, with alignment. That's the language of power, not verbosity, but clarity. And when you speak less, what you do say becomes rare and therefore valuable, because what's scarce holds meaning. So don't talk just to be liked. Don't promise just to please. Don't flatter just to gain favor. Every time you do, you dilute your power. Hold your words until you've earned the right to say them. And when you finally do, say them like you mean them. Here's the truth: words are not currency unless backed by integrity. They gain their worth through sacrifice, through effort, through consistency. That's why when someone who's lived through pain says, I understand, it heals. When someone who's proven loyalty says, I've got you, it brings peace. When someone who's stayed steady through storm says it's going to be okay, you believe them, because those words were earned. Earned words can build or destroy. They can lift someone out of despair or push them into greatness. But that power doesn't come from intellect, it comes from authenticity. That's why you must guard your integrity like it's sacred, because it's the foundation that gives your words weight. Without integrity, you're just noise. With it, your presence becomes unshakable. And when your presence carries weight, your silence speaks louder than most people's speeches. That's what it means to have earned words. So stop trying to be convincing. Be consistent. Stop trying to sound powerful. Be truthful. Stop trying to say the "are," "ite,"